Rabbi Deborah Bravo of Maycomb, New York, Dr. Isma Chaudhry of the Islamic Center of Long Island, Pastor John Yenchko of the North Shore Community Church, Brookville Mayor Dan Sirota, Laurel Hollow Mayor Daniel DeVita, Bayville Deputy Mayor David Wright, Bayville Trustee Robert Nigro, as well as David Schwartz of Gersman Schwartz LLP. County Executive Curran and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle send their strongest condemnation of this incident as well. My heart broke this Thursday. Nassau County Police responded to the picnic pavilion at the Theodore Roosevelt Park in Oyster Bay at 8:40 a.m. on Thursday, August 8th, where police observed that 7 swastikas, approximately 10 inches in size, were drawn on the pavilion structure using a purple marker sometime between Wednesday, August 7th and 8:40 a.m. on Thursday, August 8th. This was personal for me. My grandfather, Boris, is a refugee of the Holocaust. This symbol brings so much pain to my family, and pain to families like mine who suffered at the hands of its acolytes. And that's why I want to make 3 points here this afternoon. First and foremost, our priority remains identifying those responsible for committing this heinous action and ensuring that justice is quickly served. That is why I am announcing a $20,000 reward for information that directly leads to the arrest of the individual or individuals who perpetrated these anti-Semitic attacks. If you have information, we are imploring you, please come forward and call 1-800-244-TIPS. All calls are confidential. And we are so grateful that amongst those who have pledged money towards this fund, David Schwartz, Mayor Sirota, Mayor DeVita, and Trustee Nigro are here joining us today. Thank you very much for your commitment. Secondly, I want to thank the religious and civic leaders who are standing with us today. What has brought our community solace during a difficult 24 hours has been the outpouring of support received from leaders of different faiths and civic leaders of different communities. Amidst the shock and sorrow from Thursday, there is something so special about living in a community where our Christian brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters, and our brothers and sisters of no faith at all are all speaking in a loud and unified voice to denounce all acts of intolerance and bigotry. This response once again showcases that this country faces 2 divergent paths: to ignore or to engage. In times like these, we must always choose the latter. Lastly, we need to come together here in Nassau County. We need citizens of good conscience to rise up and be cognizant now more than ever to the reality that words matter, actions matter, and more importantly, inaction matters. So, if you hear a friend make a derogatory comment, speak up. If you hear or feel that somebody needs help, speak out. And most importantly, and when in doubt, adhere to the words of Dr. King. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Thank you very much. It's my privilege to bring up First Deputy Police Commissioner Kevin Smith.
Thank you. Okay, we can. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So you've heard the details, and it was put very well. You've heard that the swastikas were in the pavilion. They were located by, I believe, a town of Oyster Bay constables who were up in the area, or security that was up in the area. They brought it to our attention. Our patrol forces and detectives are now examining. So what I can tell you, and what everybody needs to understand, is that it's unacceptable conduct. It's criminal behavior. Nassau County Executive Curran and Police Commissioner Ryder have set a 0 tolerance towards bias crime of any nature. So what does that mean? So if you use paint, you use a marker, you etch, you even put chalk, some symbol of hatred on the sidewalk, it gets reported, we discover it, we conduct an investigation. We make every effort to hold somebody accountable, whoever it is. Plainly speaking, that means apprehending, handcuffing, arresting, and turning over to the district attorney's office for prosecution. Crimes associated with criminal mischief are things such as aggravated harassment and criminal mischief, punishable by sometimes up to 1 to 4 years behind bars. We're pursuing leads. We're doing our best in that regard. I would say to the public, if you heard anything about who did this, if you hear someone foolishly bragging about it, report it to our Crime Stopper number, 1-800-244-TIPS, as you've just been heard. It's anonymous, it's confidential, and it may stop the next instance if we apprehend that person. If you're interested, there may also be a reward. I urge you to do that. It's very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Commissioner. It's now my privilege to bring up Deputy Presiding Officer Howard Coppell.
Thank you, Legislator Lafazan. What is this, your third this week? Or I want to thank Legislator Lafazan for putting this together. He's a young man who's committed to many good causes. He wants to make his mark, and I think he's going to succeed. I'm here not only as a deputy presiding officer and a legislator, but I represent the largest Jewish community in Nassau County. I've had relatives who suffered in the Holocaust, and some who I never knew, obviously, who died in the Holocaust. And this is it's a very difficult moment. Last week, at our Shabbat services in the temple, the rabbi spoke about the shooting incidents that we had recently in Ohio and in Texas. And he just could not come to a conclusion. He was just upset. What do we do about it? What do we do about it? And I think maybe it's time to stop pointing fingers. It's not the fault of white supremacists and blaming whatever politician you might think supports them. It's time to stop blaming Antifa and whoever this maniac supported. It's time to stop blaming anyone who might have supported back when the congressman got shot. He was a supporter of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders didn't pull the trigger. Elizabeth Warren didn't. Donald Trump didn't. We have to look to ourselves. We have to look to our communities. We have to look to our schools. I remember an incident when I was young, and one of my little brothers said something to a worker in the home. Go get this for me, or do this for me. It was a long time ago. And I remember my mother really coming down on him. This is a person. She works hard. She's older than you. You go over and apologize. You say, Mrs., I don't remember her last name, and you apologize. And you do that from now on. And that lesson stuck with me. I've tried to give it over to my children. I think I've succeeded. I hope certainly that I have, and I think that they're giving it over to their children. And that's where it starts. It starts at home. And it starts in the schools. When I was in elementary school, I was in Brooklyn. I remember experiencing some discrimination, anti-Semitism. I'm very happy to say that now, too many years ago, 60 years later or so, I'm here in Nassau County. I don't feel it, thankfully. Thank God I don't feel it. I think we live in a wonderful community. We're supported by a spectacularly good police force. You heard First Deputy Commissioner Smith talking about the efforts. It's led by Commissioner Ryder, who's wonderfully responsive, always does what he can. We'll never be rid of all the bad people. There'll always be bad people. There'll always be antisocial people, sociopaths, and so forth. So we need the police, certainly, and we need the rewards. But let's not forget that we're a community. We've got our religious leaders here, and we've got our home, and we've got our schools, and that's where things have to start. And that's how we educate the children. And very few people grow up and have this inborn, these various hatreds. They learn it. They learn at different places, and therefore it's up to us, parents, grandparents, to teach them otherwise, and teachers to teach them otherwise, and make sure that these kids grow up, and that this generation now of young people, I see, by the way, I have an office, young people, I'm happy to say, don't even realize this person's a different color, a different race, it doesn't mean anything to most of these young people, and that's wonderful. They don't even they don't even sense it. We need to continue this and to build on it, and as I say, it starts at home and schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. It's my privilege to bring up our New York State Assemblyman, Charles Levine.
Thank you, Josh. One of my grandmothers hid in a hay wagon during a pogrom. Looking out through the hay, she saw her friends butchered. My other grandmother was from northern Russia, from Tsarist Russia. She was one of 15. She and a sister managed to be able to come to the United States for refuge. Every one of her brothers and sisters died because of anti-Semitism, died because of hatred. Today in our nation, there is too much hatred. There is too much hate speech. And I don't care who it comes from, but it does come from the top. And when it comes from the top, it seeps down to the most local of levels. These are not easy times, but in times like these, difficult times like these, when our nation faces tragedy, as we do today, I try my best to remember what Senator Robert F. Kennedy, who was our New York senator, and actually our senator from my hometown of Glen Cove, said in August of 1968, on learning that Dr. King, in June of 1968, on learning that Dr. King had been murdered. He reflected on King's dedication to love and to justice. And then these are the words he said, which I think should mean so much to us today. He said his favorite poem, his favorite poet was Aeschylus. And Aeschylus once wrote, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." While we would lose Bobby Kennedy a short 2 months after he said those remarks in Indianapolis, those words should mean everything to us as Americans today as we face this crisis. We must all stand together, which is what we are all doing here today. If we as Americans don't stand together, our nation will be torn apart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now it's my privilege to bring up our Nassau County Comptroller, Jack Schneerman.
We here today represent a diversity of backgrounds and certainly a diversity of opinions, but we stand here today in solidarity. And I should say we stand here today again in solidarity, not just in our sadness, but in our absolute agreement that we stand against the type of hatred that we saw in Oyster Bay this week. We all know, as Chuck said actually, now more than ever, how easily this kind of hate can turn into violence. It was just this week, and it has been a long week. It is just this week that we saw so many people killed in El Paso based on pure racial hatred. It was less than a year ago that we stood exactly right here on these same steps to remember those lost in the Tree of Life Community Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And we stood on these same steps to take a stand against violence and hatred that has infiltrated all aspects of our lives, from schools to malls to places of worship, without any bias and without any decision as to whether that is a mosque or a church or a synagogue. And we know we can't turn a blind eye to what happened in Oyster Bay this week, to what happens with too much frequency in our communities in general. So it is great that we're all coming together today, and it is a testament to the fortitude of our community that we do so. But let's, again, make today more than just being about together, more than just being sad, more than just saying enough is enough, but a call to action to see in real solidarity for the sake of your family and mine. Let's get to work.
Thank you very much, Comptroller Schneerman. I will now bring up Pastor John Yenchko.
My name is John Yenchko. I'm from the North Shore Community Church in Oyster Bay. And the hamlet of Oyster Bay is one of the most beautiful, generous, loving communities on Long Island. And so it was a shock that in our community such hatred would be displayed suddenly in our midst. I would say that this noxious and hate-filled symbol is unwelcome. So, 2 points. Number one, this is an opportunity, as has already been said, to teach each other and to teach our children to love one another. In my tradition, the Christian tradition, Jesus said there's 2 great commandments, and he was very clear. The first is to love God, but the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And he was quoting from the Old Testament in the book of Leviticus. So it's time to teach our children that when you hear and see hatred, to stand against it and to show them that there is a better way. It is the way to love your neighbor. The second thing I would say, and I don't know if anyone else will say it, but because I am a preacher, I would say that the people who committed this act, whether it was one person or several, may think they'll get away with it. We hope there's enough evidence so that the police can turn over to the district attorney information that could lead to the prosecution, arrest of, and punishment of someone who did this. But I would say that they need to know what the writer of Ecclesiastes says in chapter 12. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. And I believe that will happen. Jesus himself taught in the book of Matthew, I tell you, everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. Sobering words. So I and our church and the wider Christian community is glad to stand in solidarity with our Jewish friends and neighbors and to say we love you and we are for you. Thank you for your welcome today.
Thank you very much, Pastor John. I'll now bring up Dr. Isma Chaudhry.
Good afternoon, shalom, salam, and greetings. I would like to thank Legislator Lafazan for putting together this press conference. It's extremely important that we come out as one community, as people of faith or choices, but as one to denounce hatred. Today is the day of Sabbath for the Muslim community. There are Friday prayers being offered, and our imams, especially the imam at the Islamic Center of Long Island, they're offering prayers, they're offering their support for our Jewish brothers and sisters, and we are, I told this to the legislator as well, I'm Jewish. And it is as close and as personal to me, because if one of us is hurting, the other is hurting as well. These are trying times for our nation. We are submerged in the quagmire of hatred and discord. Every time a community is targeted, let's get together and denounce that hatred, strong enough and loud enough. Our message should be a loud echo coming from all communities that we denounce hatred, we celebrate diversity. When one is under attack, we are all standing shoulder to shoulder. allowed resounding no tolerance for hatred, anti-Semitism, ethnic targeting, and Islamophobia. The Quran states and guides us like the other Abrahamic traditions and non-Abrahamic traditions. Do not let your hatred of people incite you to aggression. Prophet Muhammad said that if you see aggression or witness it, if you witness hatred and injustice, stand up against it. Today, on behalf of the Muslim community of Islamic Center of Long Island and Long Island Muslim community, I would like to offer, and I hope you can accept, a contribution towards that fund. We need to put action, and thank you so much for putting that action to this day where we are coming together to denounce it. I will end with a prayer of hope that may God Almighty grant us the wisdom and the will to stand together, shoulder to shoulder, to dispel and eradicate hate and to bring support and love within our diverse Long Island communities, our country, our nation, our streets, our schools, and our homes. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chaudhry. It's my privilege to bring up Rabbi Deborah Bravo from Macomb, New York.
Good day, and thank you everyone for being here. It seems God is starting to shed a few tears in the incidents that happened this week, so we will make this brief. I stand here in gratitude for the leaders in our community who are willing to take a stand after such horrific events happen in our community, and they do so quickly and without other consideration. We stand here in gratitude that communities of differing faiths, political backgrounds, social means come together to support one another, regardless of what we think politically, philosophically, religiously about each other. We stand together in solitude and in partnership. And I come together today in hope. Though it is very difficult to look at swastikas on a wall where many of us go once a year during Rosh Hashanah for Tashlich, where we shed our sins each year annually in the water at the Theodore Roosevelt Park. It is also difficult to stand here and to think that the hope and the love and the kindness that exists in the world cannot somehow override the hatred that is out there. And so I beg, as many before me have, that we all come together to bring the kindness and the love, and let that be what leads us forward for tomorrow. We cannot allow these actions of hate to be what define us. O people of conscience, cry out against arrogance, cry out against hatred and anger, cry out against violence and oppression, for God requires us to stand in the name of justice and freedom. For God requires us to oppose terror, to muster our power and energy against racist aggression, against hatred of all kind. With your gentle and loving hand, God of shelter, unite all of your children under your canopy of hope and love. Bring the light of salvation and healing to the four corners of the earth, and let it be so. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Before we conclude, I once again want to thank David Schwartz, Mayor Dan Sirota, Mayor Dan DeVita, and Trustee Bob Nigro for pledging commitment to the fund. I want to thank Dr. Isma Chaudhry for another commitment from the Islamic Center of Long Island. And I just want to make this point clear. I am announcing a $20,000 reward for information that directly leads to the individual or individuals who perpetrated these anti-Semitic attacks. And again, if you have information, we are imploring you, please come forward. Please call 1-800-244-TIPS. All calls are confidential. With that, I thank you all for coming, and I'm happy to take any questions. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, we have one question. Oh, I'd probably defer that to the Deputy Police Commissioner.
Well, I can tell you this. Well, we always try to get evidence, whether it's witnesses or video. And in this particular case, I believe that we might have gained some video, but it's really at this point unclear whether that video will be helpful or not. Those are cameras that are associated with the park itself. But I'll let you know that basically I couldn't divulge what's in the video at this point, only merely that we're looking at the video and trying to determine whether it's successful or not in aiding our investigation. Thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you.